That alone will not be enough. We also need a president that knows what to do about it. And I do, and as president, I will do it. It will begin on my very first moments in office. I'm going to place my left hand on the Bible and my right hand in the air. And I'm going to swear to defend, protect, and uphold the Constitution of the United States. And unlike our current president, I'm actually going to mean it. And that's why my Attorney General will not be coming to the White House, like the Attorney General did yesterday, to plot on how to undermine the Second Amendment in the Constitution. My Attorney General will be someone who defends the Constitution and the constitutional rights of every single American. I won't have judges that undermine and creatively interpret the Constitution. I will appoint judges to the federal judiciary that understand the Constitution should be originally applied as originally constructed. Then I'm going to go to the Oval Office, and I will immediately begin the work of repealing every single one of Barack Obama's illegal executive orders. And so these new rulings that he's coming out with that limit and undermine the Second Amendment, on my first day in office, they're gone. All of these overreaches by the EPA, the Employment Prevention Agency, every single one of these overreaches on my first day in office is gone, are gone. Any and all efforts to impose Common Core on our schools in this country by the federal government, on my first day in office, they're gone. On my first day in office, any of these programs that are using taxpayer money to fund abortions overseas, on my first day in office, they're gone. And on my first day in office, the world will know that America is once again the strongest ally Israel has in the world, because on my first day in office, I will cancel Barack Obama's deal with Iran. On my first day in office. There's still more work to be done. Our economy is not growing fast enough because we've abandoned free enterprise. As president, we will re-embrace it. I know that presidents don't create jobs. The private sector does. And we are going to once again make America the best place in the world to start a business or expand an existing one. We're going to reform our tax code, and we're going to limit its costs. We're going to roll back regulations, and we're going to put a hard cap on how much they can cost our economy. And we are going to lead the world in energy production. And I mean in everything. We'll be a world leader in solar, and in wind, and in biofuels, and in renewables, but we are going to fully utilize the oil and natural gas we've been blessed with as well. And that will help bring back manufacturing. We need to rebuild our economy and provide people the opportunity at upward mobility, and you can only do that by re-embracing free enterprise. We need to change the relationship between Washington and this country, and we're not going to be able to do it through the political branches. I'm telling you now, we need term limits on judges and term limits on Congress and a balanced budget amendment, and you're never going to get that from Congress. They're never going to pass it. I don't care how many times they tell you they are for it, they will never pass it. The only way we can achieve that is through a mechanism that exists in the Constitution already. The framers of our Constitution were geniuses. They all happened to live at the same place at the same time by providence. And they were geniuses. And they created a mechanism whereby the people could take control of the government if the government was leaving them behind or out of touch. And in Article 5, there exists a provision for a constitutional convention of states, which can be very narrowly called. In essence, it's not open-ended. They can't just go after the First Amendment or a Second Amendment. You can call a constitutional convention of the states, and you can limit what they can deal with in that convention. And there's an effort right now by citizens called the Convention of States Movement that will do that. And what it will primarily do is limit the power of the federal government. It will create a constitutional amendment that creates term limits on Congress, term limits on the judiciary, and a balanced budget amendment on how we spend our money. And when I'm president, I will pull the full weight and force of the presidency behind that effort, because we need term limits and we need a balanced budget amendment. And when I'm president, I will do everything I can to ensure that people can achieve that. Everyone running for president as a Republican is against Obamacare. I am the only one running for president that's ever done anything meaningful about it. You see, in 2009, in order to get their support from the big insurance companies, Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, and Harry Reid created a bailout fund for these companies. A fund paid for by the taxpayer that would bail out insurance companies if they lost money under Obamacare. Well, in 2014, we wiped out that bailout fund. And it happened again this year, and the taxpayers saved $2 billion. And some people are saying that this, as a result of the loss of the bailout fund, Obamacare might collapse. Well, I most certainly hope so. But whether it does or it doesn't, when I am president, Obamacare will be gone. It will be repealed, and we will replace it with something that puts you in charge of your health insurance, not the federal government. An issue that's always been talked about for 30 years is immigration. There is no one running for president now, or I believe in recent memory, who understands the issue, and personally, better than I do. My father was an immigrant. My mother was an immigrant. My grandparents were all immigrants. My wife's entire family are immigrants. All of my neighbors are either immigrants or first generation. I live in a community of immigrants, and I was raised in one. I understand this issue, the good, the bad, the ugly, and every aspect of it. And I know three things. The first thing I know is this issue has changed. When we used to talk about this issue 2, 3, 4 years ago, it was about someone who came illegally because they were looking for a better life and a better job, and that's still happening. But this issue is completely changed now. It is first and foremost now a national security issue, because there are a radical jihadist group, and one in particular, ISIS, that is looking deliberately and systematically to exploit our immigration system to get killers into our country. In fact, they've already succeeded, at least with one person. Who knew there was a fiancé visa? Most Americans didn't. They are figuring out ways to exploit weaknesses in our southern border and loopholes in our legal immigration system. This issue has changed, and we need to deal with it now first and foremost as a national security issue. And as president, I will. And that's why when I'm president, we will be governed by a very simple standard. If we are not 100% sure who you are and why you are trying to come, you will not be allowed to legally enter the United States. The second thing that I know is we're not going to have amnesty when I'm president. Okay, sanctuary cities are not going to get their federal funding. And criminal aliens are going to be immediately deported. And the third thing, when I'm president, we are going to enforce our immigration laws. As the son and grandson of immigrants, I know that enforcing our immigration laws is not anti-immigrant. It is what sovereign countries do. And we know what it will take to enforce our immigration laws. It will take completing 700 miles of fencing and border wall. It will take adding at least 15,000 to 20,000 new border agents to the Border Patrol. It will take $3.5 to $4.5 billion of new technology, sensors and cameras on key sectors of the border. It will take a mandatory E-Verify system to shut off the job magnet that draws people here. It will take a biometric entry-exit tracking system so that we know who is overstaying visas. That's almost half the problem right there. If we can put these things in place, the issue of illegal immigration will be under control. It hasn't happened in 30 years. It will when I'm president. And last but certainly not least, the most important job a president has is to be commander-in-chief. The reason why we have a federal government is to provide for the national defense. And today this government is failing in that regard. Now, it is easy to talk tough on national security. There are candidates running who say things like they're going to carpet bomb ISIS or how they're going to make the sands in the Middle East glow in the dark. That's all great and good, but talk is cheap. You can't carpet bomb ISIS if you don't have an air force to do it with. You can't make the sands glow in the dark if you don't have bombs. You can't attack terrorists if you don't know where they are. We are weakening our military in a dangerous way. A new report out today, I encourage you to find it. It's online, the Associated Press, I believe, a story about how small our Navy has become in the Asia-Pacific region as China continues to grow. These cuts are dangerous. They're leaving us vulnerable. I don't care how good the technology is on some of these ships. It's incredible, the technology. And we support that technology. But ships cannot be in two places at once, no matter how technologically advanced they are. And we are going to wind up with the smallest Navy in 100 years and the oldest and smallest Air Force we've ever had. This is dangerous, and it is reckless. And it is reckless that people running for president as Republicans support this, and even more. When I'm president of the United States, my top national security priority will be to rebuild the U.S. military, because the world is a safer and a better place when America is the strongest military power in the world. We need to rebuild our intelligence capabilities. These terrorists that are plotting against us are not playing games. We need to learn about them. We need to know where they are and what they are plotting. We need to accept the fact that some of them are U.S. citizens born and raised in this country, like the killer in San Bernardino was, an American citizen with a newborn child and a job as a health inspector. Left all of that behind to massacre 14 people, went back home to pick up pipe bombs because he hoped to kill even more. We better find these people before they attack us, no matter where in the world they are. And we are capable of doing that without violating the civil liberties of Americans. And when I'm president, we will. We will rebuild our intelligence capabilities. We will get back the authorities we have lost, but we will add new tools to allow us to find out where these terrorists are and target them before they target us. And we will have a real war on terror. Not a rhetorical war on terror, a real one, which means the best intelligence services in the world will tell us where these terrorists are. And the most capable military in the world will target and neutralize them. We'll kill them and destroy them. And if we happen to capture a terrorist alive, they will get a one-way ticket to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, where we're going to find out everything they know about plots in the past, in the present, or in the future. Because like Barack Obama, I won't be releasing terrorists from Guantanamo. I'll be capturing and adding to the terrorists in Guantanamo. This is an important election. All of them are, but this one is truly a generational point in our nation's history, where we have to decide what kind of country we'll be in the 21st century. After 7 years of Barack Obama, we're a great country, but we're a great country in decline. It doesn't have to be this way. We're not a weak people. We're not a weak country. We just happen to have a weak president. But we're going to change that this time. We're going to change that in this election. And I'm running for president. You know, America doesn't owe me anything. America owes me nothing. I have a debt to this country I'll never fully repay. This isn't just the country I was born in. It's the nation that literally changed the very history of my family. It was the great country, the exceptional country that made possible for two immigrants with little education and no money to work as a bartender and a maid at a hotel, own a home, retire with dignity, and leave all four of their children better off than themselves. America was not a great country by accident. This did not happen on its own. We became and remained a great country because for 200 years, each generation in our history has done their part. Each generation has confronted our challenges and embraced the opportunities, and because they did, for 2 centuries, each generation has left the next better off. Now the time has come for us to do our part. And that's why I'm running for president above all else, because I want this to continue to be the kind of country where parents can do for their children what my parents did for me, and what your parents and grandparents did for you. And that's what we'll do when I'm president. When I'm president of this great country, we will re-embrace the principles that made us the greatest nation on earth. When I'm president of this country, we will do whatever it takes. We will confront our challenges and embrace our opportunities. And if we do what needs to be done, we're not just going to save the American dream. We're going to expand it to reach more people and change more lives than ever before. And the 21st century will be not just as good as the 20th century, it will be better. If we do what needs to be done in this generation, we will be the authors of the greatest chapter in the amazing story of America. And the 21st century will be a new American century. So I hope I can earn your support. Thank you for being here. I look forward to asking you. So these two gentlemen here have the microphones, if you will find them so we can hear your question. We're looking forward to it.
Yes, when I talk to people about you, I mentioned that you have been Speaker of the House and you're Senator now and you're top of your political party. But they bring up, but he wasn't a governor. Don't you think we need to have a governor? And I say back, hey, not all the governors have been great either. We have pretty close by a governor that hasn't done too great a job across the lines here. How else can I rev up for you?
You know, the presidency of the United States is the most unique political office in the world. You are the head of state of the most powerful nation on the planet. You are the commander-in-chief of the most powerful and capable military force in all of human history. There's no other job like it. Being president is not like being a senator, but it's not like being a governor either. Presidents make decisions, especially on foreign policy, that no other leader in the world confronts on a regular basis. And I invite people to look at the last 5 years that I've been involved in federal politics. There is no one running for president who has shown a better understanding or a better judgment of our national security issues than I have. No one. I am prepared to be Commander-in-Chief of the United States on my very first day in office. And no one else running for president can claim that they've shown better judgment or better understanding on the issues that we face now. Are there people running for president that have lived longer than I have? There are. But none of them understand the issues we face today better than we do, better than I do.
They like to bring up that you missed votes, but I know you've been on those foreign committees and have done so much and understand it so well.
Yes.
That
Well, yeah. First of all, my record in the Senate is close to 90% in my 5 years there.
yeah.
I have missed votes this year. You know why? Because while as a senator I can help shape the agenda, only a president can set the agenda. We're not going to fix America with senators and congressmen. The only way to turn this country around is to reverse what the damage this president has done to the United States of America. We need a president that understands what it takes. And so yes, I'm out there trying to turn this country around, running for president, and being here with you and in other early states to try to win. Because this country is at a tipping point, one where we are either going to be the first Americans that leave our children worse off than ourselves, or we are going to allow our children to be the freest and most prosperous Americans that have ever lived. There's no middle ground. It's either one or the other. This is the most serious election we have had in a very long time. And after 8 years of such consequential damage by Barack Obama, we cannot afford to get this election wrong. So absolutely, I'm doing everything I can to win, because the very future of this exceptional country is at stake. And I'm going to do whatever it takes within the bounds of what's right to ensure that I'm the next president of the United States so we can keep our country safe, and we can grow our economy, and we can leave our children what they deserve, what we inherited, the greatest country in the history of the world. Yes, sir. Thank you for your service.
I don't need that. People that know me, I don't need a microphone.
Were you, what group were you in?
I was in the 1st and the 7th.
My brother was in the 7th, 68 through 71. Did he overlap you?
No. 71, yes, he went in 71, yes.
Fort Bragg?
Fort Bragg.
Yeah, he was 68 through 71. He got out in April, and then he drove my mom to the hospital in May when she was giving birth to me. Can you believe that? 21 years older than me.
Senator, there's something I think that we need to do, and I think you're the person that should start it. The president kept a 4-star general and his CIA director, which were the same, and a true hero in the Iraq War, dangling for a year because he had 2 documents in his desk that were secret. We have a Democratic candidate who was, without a doubt, they've already found enough documents where she broke all the rules and her oath. I think it's time to start attacking Mr. Obama, saying, when are you going to do something with Hillary? Because once she gets the nomination, it'll be even more difficult. So I think now's the time, and I think you're the gentleman to do it.
Well, and we have pointed out, first of all, let me just say, the way Hillary Clinton has conducted herself as Secretary of State disqualifies her to be Commander-in-Chief of the United States. Number one, she lied about Benghazi. Okay? She was telling the families of those 4 brave Americans who lost their lives that this was a spontaneous thing, and then she was telling foreign heads of state and family members and friends this was a coordinated terrorist attack. That in and of itself is a disqualifier. But here's the second thing. She was reckless in the use of sensitive and even classified information, allowing that stuff to be repeatedly disseminated on a private server that she had to have known. She had to have known would be vulnerable to intrusion from the Chinese, the Russians, even Iranians and North Koreans. Any advanced intelligence agency could have gotten into that server. And yet she didn't care because it was convenient. She wanted to be able to read it off of her phone. This is recklessness. It's irresponsible. You cannot put someone like that in charge of the United States of America's military. And that's what she's asking us to do. We won't do it. Now, as far as the law enforcement aspects of it, let me just say this. I have full confidence in the FBI. I believe they're going to investigate this, and I think the truth will come out. And then it will take the Justice Department to prove to the American people that truly no one is above the law. And that's what I have confidence will happen. Because I believe in the FBI, and I believe in our men and women who serve us in law enforcement and bravely keep us safe every single day. No one is above the law. And I would just say one more point. We're going to have a little contested primary here among us Republicans. And there's a lot of people running, right? 1 out of 6 Republicans is running for president. A lot of people. I think it's down to 1 out of 7. So anyway. And so it's a lot of people running. But I can tell you this, none of our candidates is a socialist. And none of our candidates is under FBI investigation. So that gives a pretty good head start. Yes,
what do you think about the national debt? How will you turn that around?
Yeah. So the national debt, we can only turn the national debt around by confronting what it is it's causing. 30% of our budget is what's called discretionary spending. It's a Washington term. It basically means you can spend it any way you want. That's only about 30% of our budget. And that's where you get like foreign aid. People say, cut foreign aid, that's less than 1% of our budget. You're not going to balance your budget by getting rid of foreign aid. It's not enough money. 70% of our budget is Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and the interest on the debt. And it is the growth in that 70% that is driving our long-term debt. And that's what we need to focus on. Now, we need a balanced budget amendment on the other 30%, because it helps balance it. But on the other 70%, you're going to have to change the way Social Security and Medicare works for future generations. Now, I'm from Florida. A lot of people don't know this. There are a lot of people in Florida on Medicare and Social Security. My mother happens to be one of them. She's 85 years old. I'm against anything that's bad for her. I'm against anything that would disrupt her life. And the good news is we don't have to. We can fix Social Security and Medicare without changing it for her, or anyone like her, or people that are about to retire. But there's no way Social Security and Medicare is going to look the same for me as it does for her. And anyone who tells you that it is a liar. They're lying to you. It's going to look different one way or the other. If we do nothing, it won't exist, and our country will be bankrupt. Or we can reform it now. And if we do it now, we can do it in a way that doesn't disrupt the people that are on it now. And what do I mean by reform it? Well, today, I am supposed to retire when I turn 67. In order to save Social Security and Medicare, I may have to retire when I'm 68. That's not unreasonable. Not for someone who's 23 years away from retirement or whatever. If I've made a lot of money, my Social Security benefits, month to month, may not, or year to year, may not grow as fast as someone who made less money. That's not unreasonable in order to save Social Security and Medicare. My Medicare benefit could very well be the option of taking my Medicare money and using it to buy a private plan that I like better. We have a version of that already called Medicare Advantage. These are not unreasonable changes, and they're not too much to ask of my generation and my children after everything this country and our parents and grandparents did for us. And if we do it that way, we can bring our debt under control and we can save these important programs. If we do nothing, we have a debt crisis. And if we have a debt crisis, then all bets are off. Because then you're going to be spending more money on servicing the debt, the interest, than you are on your own military. And your economy can't grow. And then you're going to see real disruptions to people's lives. It is the most predictable crisis in American history, and we can avoid it, but it will take presidential leadership. And I've been talking about these issues since 2009, when I ran for the U.S. Senate in Florida, and everybody thought, this is it, your campaign is over. You can't talk about entitlement reform in Florida. We did, and people understand it needs to be done. The time to act is now, and if we do it, we can do it the right way. If we fail, we'll have a debt crisis.
Yeah, I want to know, what will you do if you win this election? What will you do to change the tone in Washington? What do we have? Everybody says they're going to, and there ends up being no change at all. It's business as usual, and it seems like cover up, cover up, cover up. Nobody's ever accountable for anything. Basically, we don't look a lot different from the Democrats half the time. We compromise so much that there's almost nothing left anymore.
So,
and also the second part is, if you do not win this election, I heard you're not going to run for senator again. And I just wondered what your thinking behind that was.
well, let me start with the second one. It is true that at this time next year, I will either be president-elect of the United States or a private citizen. And my thinking behind it was, I'm in public service because I want to serve the country, not because there's other things I want to do in my life as well. I don't think these positions were created for people to be there for 1,000 years or 100 years or 50 years. And the third is I want to be president of the United States. I don't think we can turn this country around without the right person. I'm not running for two positions. Some other people running for president are, but I'm not. I'm either going to be president of the United States or a private citizen. And I'll do, and that is the decision that we made, and that's what we're focused on doing right now, in addition to continuing to serve the people of Florida in the time that I have left in the U.S. Senate. On your first question about the tone in Washington, look, there are some issues that we're going to disagree with the Democrats on, and that's why we have elections. They love Obamacare. We want to get rid of it. We're going to have a fight about it. They're not that interested in the national debt. We are. We're going to have a fight about it. And there are issues that we can work together on. And on those issues, I'll work with anyone who's serious about improving issues. I won't compromise on my principles, but I'll compromise on ideas, not on principles. So I think we can work together on issues like higher education and student loans and so forth. Now, we're not going to have some of the proposals Bernie Sanders come up with, but we are going to be able to find alternatives to student loans. We're going to be able to find competition in higher education to get rid of this monopoly that current colleges and universities have. We can work on more vocational training, which I don't know why we stopped training people in this country to work with their hands, to be plumbers and pipe fitters and welders and machinists. We can work with people to do that, to provide students more information on how much they're going to make when they graduate with that degree before they take out a loan to pay for it. I have bipartisan ideas on those issues now. I believe we can work together on some national security issues. 2 weeks ago, I passed a new law that put new sanctions on Hezbollah, okay, a horrible terrorist group. I did it with a Democratic senator from New Hampshire. Earlier in the year, I did the same bill with the same senator that changed the way we give foreign aid to other countries to ensure that little girls are getting birth certificates so they don't become victims of human trafficking. There are issues we can work together on, but there are issues we're going to have a disagreement on. And that's why we have a republic. And that's why every 2 years you get to vote for a congressman, every 6 years you get to vote for senators, and every 4 years you get to vote for president. Now, the tone for our nation is the issue I think you're also touching upon. I am not going to be a president that pits Americans against each other. Number one, I believe in free enterprise because it is the only economic model in the world where we can make poor people richer without making rich people poorer. And I'm going to constantly remind people of that. This is not about people that are making too much. This is about people that aren't making enough. And we're going to focus on ensuring that we're not hurting anyone who's been successful, but we are going to do everything we can to help people that are trying to be successful, who want to work and get ahead. And that's why I'm a believer in free enterprise. I'm never going to come to you and say, let's pit Americans against each other. Vote for me because if you give me the power, I will punish this other group of Americans who is the reason why you're not doing well. That's what this president's chosen to do. I will not. When I was growing up, I lived in Las Vegas for 6 years as a child. There wasn't a lot for kids to do in Las Vegas in the early and mid-'80s. I mean, how many times can you go to Circus, right? And so one of the things my parents liked to do, just to keep us entertained, I guess, is we would drive. There was this, I guess, nice neighborhood at the time where some of the wealthier people lived. And we would drive around and they would show us these nice houses. There was not a lot to do. One of the houses was Liberace's. I don't know why I remember that, but he was one of the houses. And my parents had a choice to make. My parents could say to us, you see these people in these nice houses? You know why we live in a small house and don't make a lot of money? Because they make too much money. They're exploiting us. They're doing bad things. And they could have done that. You know what they did instead? You know what they taught us? This is what they taught us. You can be anything you want. If you want to live in a house like that, you can do it. You're going to have to work hard. You're going to have to sacrifice. You're going to have to persevere. But if that's the kind of life you want, you can achieve it. You're in the one place on earth where it doesn't matter that your father's a bartender and your mother's a maid. If you work hard and you have the ability, you can achieve what those people achieve if what you want to do is make money and be financially successful. And that has followed me my entire life. That was one of the most important contributions they ever made to me, was instilling in me the belief that we live in a country where anyone can go as far as their talent and their work will take them. That's the kind of country I want us to remain, and we're losing that. And when I'm president, I'll do everything I can in tone and tenor to ensure we get it back.
Senator, first it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for coming.
My question is to what the President did yesterday, with more of his executive orders is trying to do. What can you, the Senate, and/or the Congress as a whole do to take back the power he has usurped, or you and the people in Congress have given him and allowed him to get away?
Well, he's abusing executive orders. I mean, what he's basically doing is he's issuing these things and he's ignoring the legalities of it. And he's challenging it. What he's basically saying is, try to overturn me in Congress, which he knows he can stop because he has the Democrats have enough votes in the Senate to stop it, or take me to court, which he knows that by the time it works its way through the court system, years have passed, and he may not even be in office anymore. So there's a mechanism by which we can repeal these sorts of things, but because of the filibuster rule, we're kind of stopped from doing it. And if you don't have a veto-proof majority, which we won't have, that's in the Constitution, that's not a rule in the Senate, then he can stop us that way. And the other is go to court. We can take him to court. And we have, and there have been people taking him to court. But it takes years to work through the court system. And sometimes the court will issue a stay, like it did on his second illegal amnesty. And sometimes they won't, and it moves forward. I think the best thing we can do is remind ourselves that a year from today, we're going to have on the way a new president. Barack Obama's time as president will be over. We've got one more year to put up with him, and then he's gone. And our choice better be the right one. If it's Hillary Clinton, you're not just going to have what he's doing now, you're going to have more of it, maybe even bigger. Or we can elect someone that is truly committed to reversing all the damage he's done and moving us back in the right direction. And that's what motivates me to run for office. Is I deeply, fully believe with all my heart that this is such a special country because of the principles we were founded on and the things that made us great: limited government, free enterprise, a strong national defense, He has abandoned all of those principles, and it is weakening our country, and it is changing it fundamentally. We need to reverse all of that. We need to get back to the principles that made us great and apply them to the challenges of a new century with new issues that we face today. That's the best thing we can do. And you're in Iowa, you get the first choice. You get the first voice. The first time Americans are going to hear about a choice in this presidential race will be here in the caucus. And that's why I'm here to ask you for your support. Because if I'm our nominee, the Democrats are going to be the party of yesterday, and we're going to be the party of tomorrow. They're going to be the party of the stale and old ideas of big government and weak national defense and all the things that Barack Obama's been for. And we're going to be the party that applies conservative principles to the unique challenges of the 21st century. We're not just going to unify this party. We are going to create new conservatives. We are going to bring people in that have not voted Republican or conservative in 20 years. And we're going to convince them that what we stand for is better than what the other side stands for. You know who we're going to campaign to? The men and women who clean the rooms in this hotel. Because that's what my mother did. And I can say to them why I'm a conservative. Because it's the only economic model in the world where people like that can leave their children better off than themselves. We're going to campaign to the people whose job was replaced by a machine or sent to another country. Because we're going to explain to them those jobs are gone because of this horrible tax code that Barack Obama defends. And we're going to make America competitive again so those jobs come back. Because our workers are the most productive workers in the world. We can compete with anyone if you just give us a fair chance. We're even going to talk to labor unions, the people that built pipelines, the people, the welders, the plumbers, the pipe fitters. We haven't talked to them in a long time. And it's them that are being harmed when you see the Keystone Pipeline isn't allowed to go through, when you see these anti-economic policies that the EPA is pursuing with this president's encouragement. It is those jobs that are being wiped out. We're going to campaign in every corner of this country, and we are going to create new conservatives because we're going to apply the principles we stand for to the unique challenges of their lives. And we're going to win this election and turn America around.
Senator, this will be the last question.
Good morning, Senator. My name is Joe. I'm from University of Iowa. I'm a county major, so I studied an interesting class last year called Introduction to Federal Tax, which is so complicated. My fellow students feel so hard to understand those deductions and exemptions. And I asked my instructor, say that, is that any possible we can have a new president or a new administration that can do something to change it? They said no, because there's so much there's other groups that are fighting for it. So in your opinion, how we go to reform the tax code that is more, let us to understand a little better and then easy to pay tax?
Well, your professor's right that there are a lot of interests involved in the tax debate that make it hard, but it's not impossible. And it begins by making it a priority. You have to have a president that makes tax reform a priority, and this president I will. A tax code that is simpler. My tax plan, instead of 7 brackets, only has 3. A tax code that allows businesses to immediately expense whatever they invest in their business. You don't need all these loopholes if you have that. Because you'll have a tax code that's very simple. If you invest $10 into your business, you get $10 written off your taxes that year. You don't have to go through these complicated exemptions that are carved out for interest that hire lobbyists. We're going to have a tax code that brings $2 trillion back to America that are sitting overseas. There are $2 trillion of American corporate cash sitting in other countries. And you know why? Because our tax code. We're the only major industrial country that double taxes you. If you make money in Germany as a company, you pay German taxes. And then if you bring it back to create jobs in Iowa, you pay taxes on it a second time. That's ridiculous. We're going to fix that. You're only going to pay taxes once, and that's in the country where you earn the money. We're going to have a flat tax rate for all business income. Why is that important? Because if you're a small business owner, let's say you're an S corporation or a partnership, you pay on your personal rate, right? Your personal rate could be as high as 39.5%. Meanwhile, a major corporation might be paying 0 or 5 or 10. We're going to have a flat business tax rate of 25% on all businesses, no matter how you're organized. And you won't have a lot of accounting bills. I'm sorry, they won't have a lot of accounting bills. They'll still need accountants, don't worry. And auditors, they'll need a lot of auditors. But we're going to have a flat tax rate that treats all businesses fairly and exactly the same, and they're going to be able to immediately expense every penny they invest in their business. So it is possible. You have to have a president that makes it a priority. And we're going to do that when I'm president. Let's take one more. I feel bad that I'm cutting out. I know I got to go one more place, but let's get the microphone to you just so we can hear it. My coffee's gotten cold, so I got to run it.
Well, if I could, 2 quick ones. One, just as far as abortion, I'm guilty, like they say in the paper. People are getting to know their candidates now in January. Sorry. So as far as abortion, is there any exceptions in your stance as far as abortion goes? And then a second question on a different subject would be, as far as term limits go, so I'm actually from the Dubuque area, drove an hour and 20 minutes or so. Right outside of Dubuque, a little community, the mayor job there is kind of a thankless job, so it kind of comes and goes. There's no term limit. Because of that, the person that has the power in that community is the city administrator, which is not an elected position, and she's the one that pretty much makes things go. Actually, not a very likable person, quite honestly. But if we have term limits, what's to keep PACs and all these other interests from having the power, since those are now revolving doors as far as the elected positions?
Yeah. Well, that's the argument that's always used against term limits. It was used in Florida. We have term limits in the state of Florida on the state legislature. I served there 8.5 years. I got a half a year only because I got elected in a special election, but 8.5 years. And then I left, and the sky didn't fall. We've now had term limits for almost 20 years in Florida, and the sky hasn't fallen. What happens is someone serves 8 years and they go back to being a private citizen or maybe run for something else, and a new person comes in. This is a country where we have people capable of serving in public service, and I just think at the end of the day, when you weigh the cost and the benefit, you're going to get better government when you have new people constantly coming in, not people that are there. Because what happens over time is you get stale. You lose your drive. You become a creature of the institution. You fall in love with the institution. You think defending the Senate is more important than fighting on behalf of America, for example. And so I just ultimately believe, as someone that has served at both the state level and the federal level with term limits and without term limits, that we are going to be better served by allowing new people to enter the process on a regular basis. I don't believe this system as government was designed for people to serve 40 years in the same position. And in fact, if the framers of our Constitution had thought people would ever want to do that, I believe they would have put in term limits. The problem is that when they drafted the Constitution, nobody wanted to be in government. I mean, they had to beg Washington to run for president. And serving in the Congress meant getting in a carriage and traveling long distances and maybe dying on the way there or on the way back, and then having to serve in the swamp, which is what Washington was at the time. So I think if they had thought, in their mind, no one's going to want to be here for 20 years, much less 50. And so I just think when you weigh the cost and the benefit, term limits are better for us. The first issue you talk about is an important one. It is a difficult issue. I'm pro-life, but I never simplify the issue because it's a hard issue. If you apply it to a real person in the real world, you see how difficult it is. Abortion is an issue that deals with, for example, let's say a 15-year-old girl who finds herself pregnant. And she knows the father of that child is never going to be around. She's all on her own, and she's scared. And it's hard. I'm not saying that's easy. That's a difficult situation. This is an issue that poses a dilemma because it has two competing rights, and they're in conflict with each other. The right of a person to choose what to do with their own body is in conflict with the right of an unborn human being to live. And I have to choose which one of these two rights do I line up with. And I've chosen life. Because I believe that without life, there is no liberty, there is no way to pursue happiness. I've erred on the side of life, understanding that it's a hard issue. You ask about exceptions, I do support an exception to save the mother's life because I'm pro-life. I don't require exceptions. But I will support or sign a bill as president that has exceptions because what I'm interested in is saving lives. Right now there's a bill working through Congress. It prohibits abortions after 20 weeks. There has to be, no matter how you feel about this issue, 70% of Americans feel this way, that at some point it can't be legal. The day before they're due, or when the child is viable outside the womb, at some point there's got to be a limit. No matter how you may feel about the issue, there's a bill working through Congress to do that, and it has exceptions. I've co-sponsored it. If it passes as president, I will sign it, because I'm interested in saving as many lives as we can. Now here's what makes me chuckle, and I'm not saying this is what you've done. It shouldn't even make us chuckle. The Democrats have extremist positions on abortion. Extremist positions. Hillary Clinton believes that partial birth abortion, which is a gruesome procedure that was outlawed in America, she supports that procedure. She voted against outlawing it. She called it a fundamental right to be able to do that. She believes that abortion should be legal at any part of the process, even when the child is viable outside the womb. Even 2 weeks before the due date, even the day before the child is delivered, she believes it should be legal. She supports zero restrictions. That is an extremist position. It puts her in a small minority of Americans, and she's never asked about it. You never hear that question raised at a debate to the Democrats. You never hear them ask Senator or Secretary Clinton or whoever, Senator Sanders, why is it okay to abort a child 8.5 months into a pregnancy when the child is viable outside the womb? When it's clear the child can feel pain? Why is that okay? And they never ask them that question. That's what the outrage in this issue. So I am proudly pro-life. And I understand that this is a difficult issue, but I know where I stand because to me it's not a political issue, it's a human rights issue. Thank you for having me. God bless you.